Sunday, 2nd of April, 2017. In a wooded area of Richmond, Virginia, a shocking and grotesque discovery is made.
There's a guy who was walking through and saw something hanging out of a rubber storage bin.
To find a human body in such a box was very alarming. What could be the cause of death? Who did this to him?
It took quite a while to identify this person.
For investigative purposes, they didn't want the family to know that he had been discovered, that that box had been discovered. They already thought the family was involved in this.
They have a horrific relationship.
She was jealous. She wanted all attention on her. It can't be on anybody else. It has to be all on her. He was wanting to let her in. She definitely used that against him.
This is the story of Martre Coles, just 19 years old and savagely murdered at the hands of a green-eyed killer. The 2nd of April, 2017, Richmond, Virginia. The body of a young male is discovered in a wooded area near an industrial estate.
There's a guy that was on lunch break, decided to go for a walk, was walking through and saw something over by an electrical box in the woods that had something hanging out of it, and that's what triggered him to walk towards it. When he got closer, he realized that it was a shoe hanging out of a rubber storage bin. Hesitantly, he went over and investigated himself, and when he pulled the top off, inside was a body. The way it was described to me is that he was basically folded up like an accordion inside that, small rubber box, and his shoes were hanging over the lip of that box. That's what obviously got the attention of the guy, and that's why he called 911.
Obviously, to find a human body in such a box was very alarming to the young man, and certainly was very alarming to investigators and to my office.
Emergency responders rushed to the scene.
The first officers on the scene are not homicide detectives. When they got there and realized what they were dealing with, that's when they secured the scene, put up the crime scene tape, and called in homicide.
The homicide detectives came to the scene, and we start to document what was found. So that starts with taking photographs of where we find the actual storage bin under the bush, what the surrounding environment looks like in terms of the clearing, how close it is to the road, what it might look like if one were to drive from one direction of the road, from another direction of the road, from where this box was found. Also, of course, looking at the contents of the box, putting down a sheet, making sure that we have the medical examiner there, making sure that everyone's being very careful and having gloves and being very gentle to extract his body. Of course, it's documented in the bin itself, and then we extract to find what else might be contained in the box that might help us understand what could be the cause of death, who did this to him. And so those are the certain things that are happening during that day as we're trying to positively also identify who is this young man who was left in this condition.
At the time, I was the domestic violence prosecutor. The first information I received is that they had found a young boy who at the time, based on his size, they actually believed to be a child. And based on the little bit of information that law enforcement had gathered at the scene, they believed that this case would be a domestic violence case. When they rolled his body out of the bin onto a sheet to take photographs and see if there was maybe a wallet or an ID in his pocket, that's when they discovered that his hands had actually been bound behind his back. using a purple athletic tape, almost like you would use to wrap your ankle. They also noticed that the shoes on his feet looked very worn and old, but didn't seem to actually fit his feet. They were too large. And they found a pencil and a necklace that they thought may be of significance.
The necklace that was found had a number on it that was, we believe, attributed to his high school graduation year.
There was a mealy, sandy type substance in the box with him that appeared to be something other than just plain dirt. That was actually sent to the lab and tested, and it came back as lime, which we believe that the lime was added to the box in an effort to slow the decomposition as well.
We are all trying to figure out how this came to be. How was he dressed and placed in the box in this fashion? Who put this purple tape around his wrists? And certainly, who would have placed him in this particular area of Henrico County, in an industrial area where nobody would really be able to find him but for the circumstances that presented that day when a gentleman found himself late to work.
It took quite a while to identify this person. There was no ID or wallet or anything that had any form of identification found with the body. So essentially they took a photograph of a dead body and started trying to see if they could find a match anywhere in like the DMV system, which was a shot in the dark for them at that point, because based on his appearance, they weren't sure that he would have been old enough to even be in the DMV system. Now, ultimately, obviously, they found a photograph in DMV that they believed to be him. And that's when they started doing some additional background research, and by pure happenstance came across the missing persons report that had been filed previously.
The body is identified as 19-year-old Martre Coles, who had been reported missing by his sisters nearly 3 weeks earlier.
Obviously, police, when they looked at the body, they knew he didn't put himself in there. It wasn't suicide, yet they couldn't find a bullet wound or a knife wound or anything like that. So they kind of like, okay, let's pause here and think about what we're going to do. And they took the body to the medical examiner's office, and in the meantime asked media folks to hold off on reporting it until they could get, their ducks in a row.
The autopsy result provides investigators with vital information into Martre's death.
He had traces of GHB in his system, which is commonly known as the date rape drug. So it makes people woozy and not as responsive and able to fight. So we think he was probably out of it. The medical examiner was not 100% sure of how he suffocated. He knew that that was the ultimate cause of death, but he said it was very possible that he may have been alive when he was put in that position, but he was drugged to the point that he couldn't move, and the position is actually what caused him to die.
Police make the decision not to notify Martre's family right away, in the fear that it could hinder the investigation.
We, of course, had to figure out who could have done this to him. And so we knew that there were different points of time that we wanted to see who might have been around or not around.
They already thought the family was involved in this, so they didn't want to tip them off that, hey, we found the body. For investigative purposes, they didn't want the family to know that he had been discovered, that box had been discovered.
Detectives know how Martre died, but the hunt for his killer is ongoing, and the motive remains unknown. The 2nd of April, 2017, Richmond, Virginia. The body of 19-year-old Martre Coles is found in a storage bin near an industrial estate. Detectives begin a murder investigation, taking a closer look at his background and hoping it will lead them to his killer. They discover that just 3 weeks earlier, Martre was reported missing by his sisters.
Martre Coles was the youngest of 4 children. At the time of his death, Martre was 19, so he had graduated high school back in 2016, the year prior. He was an artist. He was very talented, certainly as what his father described of him, as his sisters described of him, and was a young man who had a lot of desires to do something with that very particular talent, to include going to a school and develop his artistic flair.
But he was fun, soft, a mother's boy. He liked the art. I know he wanted to go to college to design for video games, like drawing characters for video games and things like that. One of my favorite memories is when he used to draw on my back. Our backs was like easel boards. He'll draw like ugly faces of us and stuff, or how he felt about us that day or at that time, things like that. Trey was fun.
His family and his girlfriend said that he was just the sweetest boy you would ever meet. He was kind, he was happy, he was creative, artistic, had a deep, loving relationship with his siblings and his mother, who unfortunately had predeceased him a few years before he died. He was the youngest child in the family, so I think he was very attached to his mother, and apparently, according to the siblings, had really struggled with her death and had gone through a period of what you would probably call depression shortly after that. But when he met his girlfriend in high school, they really bonded, and he kind of came back to life a little bit.
Because he was the baby, he was like always under my mom, a mom's boy. Wherever she wanted to go, he wanted to go. He didn't really speak too much on my mother's death affecting him. I do think it hit him pretty hard because they were so close. She was like the only thing he really knew. But when I talked to him about it, he said that he was fine. But I don't think he was. I think he was kind of lost after my mom passed.
I think he gave him the push to want to get up and get out of Highland Springs and better himself. His father and him didn't have a real good relationship. Maurice Coles, Martre's father, he worked all the time, so he wasn't really around.
When his mother died, I think everyone in the family would indicate that the 2 people that took it the hardest were Martre and his father. And his father went down a path of essentially deep depression and self-abusive behavior. He wasn't eating, he was drinking excessively, he would sometimes go to work, but when he did, he may still smell of alcohol or even be a little intoxicated. And he met Denise at work. They were co-workers. She saw what he was going through and reached out, I would say probably initially in a somewhat genuine way, to try to help someone she knew, but quickly saw it as an opportunity to better her own situation. She started taking care of Martre's dad. She would cook for him, she would make sure he got up and went to work, and then quickly, just months after the death of his wife, moved herself and her daughter into the home and inserted herself into that substitute mother and wife role.
They moved to the Ivy Street location in Henrico County. But at the time that this happens, Denise Gay also has a 12-year-old daughter named Elena Hagens, and now she is also in the home where they reside in Ivy Street.
The rest of the family, talking to Michelle, the daughter, they thought it was pretty quick, but they didn't really think twice about it. And then Martre had to adapt pretty quickly with this new blended family that was moving into his dad's house.
I didn't like Denise. I didn't like Denise the first time I met her, we never had a conversation. The 4 or 5 years my father was with her, I didn't like her at all. She just gave me like this weird energy, like something was just off.
When I first met Denise, I felt like she was sneaky. Like, she didn't say anything when she first saw us. She didn't introduce herself. She said nothing. She was just looking like, why was we there? So that was an instant red flag.
I don't think they were close. I think he was trying to be close to her. I think she used his talent to manipulate him, and he took that as her being mothering, caring. Of course, he's going to give in. He lost his mother, so that's what he's looking for. And I definitely think she used his talent to manipulate the situation. He was blind at first and then started becoming aware.
Tensions only grow as Martre begins to feel unwanted by Denise and her daughter Elena.
Elena and Martre were kind of at each other. She was 12 at the time. They kind of fought a little bit. Martre was annoyed that he had always had to take care of her, babysit her. There was an episode during their tenure where Elena got mad at Martre and stabbed him with a pair of scissors in the shoulder.
They have a horrific relationship. And there could be various reasons. We do know that at that time, Elena was having a lot of problems herself. We know that she had poured bleach under his bedroom door. We believe that she thought that somehow that would be poisonous, that would do harm to Martre. There was another time where she threw a piece of pottery, like a garden gnome squirrel at Martre. It ends up breaking into pieces there at the door. Just constant turmoil. And this was something that Denise Gay was very, very aware of.
I got phone calls from Martre that she was being mean and doing things like stabbing him. I've had to go over there and pick him up from multiple fights that Elena initiated or started, yeah.
Detectives are then made aware of an incident between Elena and another of Denise's daughters, LaToya, which had occurred 2 days before Martre's body had been discovered.
LaToya was early 20s. She was not living in the house anymore, but she was frequently be asked to come watch Elena, who was almost on like a house arrest type situation at home. Denise had installed cameras in the house where she could watch what Elena was doing 24 hours a day. They had put a security system on the exterior of the house so that if any of the doors or windows were open, people would know. And what we learned from Elena was that it really wasn't about keeping people from coming in, it was about keeping her from going out. She and LaToya got into it one night when LaToya was there to watch her while her mother was at work. And Elena opened a window to set the alarm off in the house, which called the police. And when the police showed up, LaToya said it was just a, dispute between sisters and there was nothing really wrong. And then Elena asked if she could talk to one of the officers by herself. So they pulled her over to the side and she basically said, "I saw my mom and my sister kill my stepbrother and put him in a bin." And this was recorded on the body-worn camera that the police were wearing. They went and called a supervisor and said, "What do we do with this?" And they said, "Well, we'll document it." Like, there's no evidence at that point that anyone knew anybody was missing, or they didn't connect the dots to figure out that Martre really was missing. And then lo and behold, we find his body. And guess what? He's found in a Rubbermaid bin, just like she said. She actually saw her mother and sister on top of him, which appears to be when he was suffocated, and then later sees them pushing a heavy box out of the house.
When we came across the incident that happened on March 31st, and actually are able to watch the body-worn camera and get to hear what Elena had said about what she'd seen her mother and sister doing, That helped us focus our attention on the mother-daughter duo.
On the 13th of March 2017, in Richmond, Virginia, 19-year-old Martre Coles is reported missing. On the 31st of March, his stepsister Elena Gay tells police that she witnessed her mother Denise and sister Latoya kill Martre. The statement is not followed up on until the 2nd of April, when Martre's body is discovered. Piecing the timeline together, detectives begin soloing in on Denise and Latoya Gay.
When we found the body on April 2nd, and Detective Egan and Detective West were made aware of the March 13th missing person report and then the call for service on March 31st, we were going to be executing a search warrant the next day on April 3rd. One of the things that we're going to be looking for are electronic devices. Denise's laptop, Denise's cell phone, Martre's laptop, all of that was going to be very critical for what then would become the next type of forensic evidence, which is the digital evidence to help us put this case together.
Martre's long-distance girlfriend, Ashlyn, is the first to notice his absence and alert his sisters.
Martre and his girlfriend, they were in contact 24 hours a day, all the time, even though they didn't even live in the same city. They had shared each other's passwords for social media, they had shared each other's passwords for email, and they talked constantly from the time they woke up until the time they went to bed. And so the first thing that really set up an alarm was the fact that he wasn't responding to his girlfriend's text messages. He had been, the day before he disappeared, with his sisters for a period of time. And so when he stopped responding to text messages, his girlfriend, Ashlyn, reached out to his sisters. When they got Ashlyn's message and realized he's not responding to her, everybody got very worried because it just wasn't in his nature to be non-responsive. What we later discovered was that he had been receiving emails from someone by the name of Sheila Crenshaw, who was helping him set up a trip to visit Full Sail University in Florida for kind of an admission weekend for art students. Denise Gay had been helping him in this process of applying, doing his project, etc. So initially, when people started asking why he wasn't responding, Denise Gay's answer was, well, you know, he was supposed to be going out of town to visit Full Sail University. But then they started saying, well, things just didn't really add up.
Martre's girlfriend had access to his email, and she read it, and the first thing she noticed, it was signed or it was sent by someone with a Gmail account. And she's like, this is not right, because if it was legit, it'd be sent from a .edu account, and that was an automatic red flag for her. So she started asking questions, and then she started telling what she found to the sister, who then the sister came over to ask questions of Denise and company.
When we went over there, Denise and Latoya were coming from the back of the home. In like unison, like I would see them together, but it was like a unison. I instantly knew something tragic had happened. Another thing that was off was me and Denise, we never spoke. We never talked, not even from when I initially met her. We never had a conversation. And she was trying to be manipulative, talking to me, conversing with me as if me and her were best friends. That behavior alone was weird and just strange. And I meet Elena in the hallway. She just gave me this look, basically letting me know that Denise and Latoya had did something. So when I walked back up to the front, I was about to approach Latoya, and she hurried up and grabbed her things and she runs out the door. I walked to the back, and that's when I saw his the laptop thing that he used to like to walk around with. And I'm like, where did you say Martre went again? And she was like, oh, he took all his things. And I don't even think she noticed the laptop was right there. She's like, he took his laptop, it's okay. And I was like, I'm just going to inform you right now that I'm going to the authorities. If Martre does not pop up within 24 hours, I will be pressing charges and making it very known that you were the last person to see him. I just want you to know.
A member of law enforcement started asking questions at the house about where Martre was and when the last time was people had seen him, but they were approaching it from a missing persons case. No one knew that he was dead or that we had found a body. And they thought, hey, if these are the people that are really involved, if we start asking questions, maybe one or some of them will be curious to see if we know more than they are being told that we know. And so a member of law enforcement put up actually a personal hunting camera at an angle on one of the trees near where the body had been found. And lo and behold, it didn't take long for us to catch footage of a vehicle that matched the description of one of the vehicles owned by the family that would be driven by either Martre's father or Denise on a fairly regular basis. And then the shape of a human walking past the camera to where the body had been found and then back in the middle of the night.
For detectives, the case to pin Denise and LaToya Gay as prime suspects in the murder of Martre Coles is building. They begin to look at the digital evidence.
One of the things that we discovered when we got all of our digital evidence back from the FBI was that Denise was so controlling and manipulative of a person that she monitored everything in her life, including her bank accounts. We had access to her email accounts, her cell phone records in terms of her movements through GPS. She had set up her bank accounts so that every single time any transaction above the amount of $2 occurred, she got an email sent to her telling her that that had happened and where it had happened and how much it was and what day and what time. We found that we could trace through her GPS and her emails her whereabouts for much of the time between Martre's disappearance and his body being found, including purchases at Goodwill. And our theory was that they bought shoes at Goodwill to put on his feet because they realized he didn't have any shoes on. We also knew that they probably didn't put Martre's body where it was found initially. We traced that they actually made a stop at a different place in the woods for about 10 minutes the day that he went missing, and then returned to that spot and went to the spot where the body was found. In this case, we were able to trace Denise Gay's phone to that location at the exact day and time that we had photographs of a human walking over to where the bin had been found and back. And so when we pieced everything together, while in court you cannot say Denise Gay was the person walking, we could say Denise Gay's phone was there and there's a human there. Who do you think it was?
On the 10th of April 2017, 8 days after Martre's body was found, Denise and LaToya Gay are arrested and taken in for questioning.
She completely denied it. She said she didn't know anything about it. She didn't do anything. Then she just stopped talking.
We know what happened. And you know
What happened?
And you know that we found him. We know that.
What happened?
That's what we want you to tell us.
But you're saying that you know what happened.
We do.
What happened?
You killed him in your house.
Interestingly, her daughter LaToya had one of, to me, the funniest responses to being asked about murder that I've seen in my career. Law enforcement arrested her in South Carolina based on our warrant, and then the detectives on our case drove down there to try to interview her with the goal of hoping that she would basically testify against her mother. And when the law enforcement officers from Henrico said, "We're here to ask you about a homicide, you're being charged with murder," her response was, "The warrant's for me?"
It's a little bigger than the police coming to the house and you having to come out there. I mean,
there's a murder warrant for you.
For me, why is it for me?
She didn't seem surprised someone was charged with murder. She was just surprised she was charged, which I thought was kind of interesting because it was almost an admittance to the fact that her mother did it.
Both Denise and LaToya Gay deny all claims that they were involved in Martre's murder, but the evidence strongly indicates otherwise. Detectives now need to use the evidence to build a case for court if they are to obtain justice for Martre. On the 10th of April 2017, Denise Gay is arrested and charged for the murder of 19-year-old Martre Coles, based on mounting digital evidence and a statement from Denise's own daughter, 12-year-old Elena.
So in investigations in Henrico County, normally they just get you something to hook you up with. So it gets you no bond and they can further the investigation. I think in Denise Gay's case is they hooked her on second-degree murder charges and maybe some other charges that were outstanding with hopes that she would not get a bond, which she didn't, and then their detectives could still work on it while she was incarcerated.
Her criminal history was extensive. She had convictions in multiple states, all for what you would call fraud-type crimes.
We looked at her as someone who was seeking out this companionship, manipulating Maurice Coles, for lack of a better term, and we described her as someone who essentially was a narcissist.
Police finally inform the family of the death of their beloved son and brother, Martre.
I was getting ready for work, and they called and they said, "Can we stop by your house? We just want to talk to you." And I was like, okay. So they came over and they told me they found Martre. And I'm like, oh, okay, where he at? That was I don't know why I was like, where he at? And it was like, I just lost it. I couldn't even hold my emotions no more. I just called my sister, called my brothers, and then everybody just came over. They said they had a suspect in custody, and I'm like, I already know it's Denise, but who? And she was like, Denise, and she was like, we have a second suspect. And I said, who? LaToya.
Police also need to rule out Martre's father, Maurice. He has an alibi for the day of Martre's murder, but up until now has refused to cooperate.
From the very beginning, Martre's father was very hard to deal with and would not believe that Denise had anything to do with his son's disappearance or death, and for the most part didn't want to communicate with prosecutors. He didn't want to talk to us. He didn't want to share information. We tried our best to say, this is what's going on. Do you want to meet with us? Can we answer questions? And he just didn't want to communicate at all.
The trial for the murder of Martre Coles begins December 2017.
In Denise Gay's laptop, we obviously were able to find the email exchange between Denise Gay and Martre Coles. We were able to identify it coming from Denise's laptop. We were aware of a VPN device that was used in order to try to, throw off the fact that where it was being used at the time, but we were still able to put that all together because we knew that Denise Gay had made that purchase of a VPN. There were certain searches about how to suffocate someone using lye, which was very important when we were talking about what was ultimately found on the body, which was lime. Lye could actually hasten the decomposition of a body, whereas lime would slow it down. And there were other searches that certainly provided a narrative that Denise Gay was looking to harm someone, and we of course said that person she was looking to harm was Martre Coles.
We tried Denise and LaToya together as co-defendants at the same time. They were both charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and first-degree murder. And the jury came back unanimous on guilty for conspiracy to commit murder and hung on first-degree murder. The only possible explanation that any of us ever came up with was that there was somebody on the jury that knew the punishment for first-degree murder, and they just didn't want to make somebody go to jail for that long.
With the jury deadlocked, a retrial is scheduled for April 2018. Finally, Martre's father, Maurice, begins cooperating ahead of the second trial.
I think he finally accepted the fact that Denise killed his son. During the first trial, he was a witness, but he was a witness for maybe 5 minutes. He was then allowed to sit in the courtroom and watch the entire trial. And he did. After the case ended, he had a phone call with Denise while she was still at the jail that made it very clear to us when we listened to it that after watching that trial, he realized that she was not who she had pretended to be, that she had manipulated him and everyone else that he knew. And he probably at that point believed she really had killed his son. And I think when he realized that and he saw that she had not been convicted of the homicide, but just the conspiracy, that he decided if there was anything he could do to help put the person that killed his son in jail for as long as possible, he was going to do it. And he called and was like, "What do you need?" And we specifically said, "Do you know where her phone is?" We asked because we wanted it. He gave us Denise Gay's purse, which had her actual cell phone in it, that had been locked in the trunk of her car the day she got arrested. So it still had on the phone itself all of the content for all of her text messages. No one had gone in and touched it. The second time we tried the case, we had all of the messages back and forth. We had communications between Denise and LaToya about the house being searched, about it's not there, that happened to coincide with the exact time that the phone is located where the body was, and we have a human walking past the camera where the body was. So we had evidence that LaToya and Denise were communicating with each other at very important times, and now the context of what they were actually saying to each other. And we had layers of evidence at that point, not just their location, but also what they were saying to each other. And that became really important.
Denise Gay is convicted of first-degree murder and is sentenced to life in prison for the killing of Martre Coles. In a separate trial, LaToya Gay is sentenced to 30 years in prison for her role in the act.
We believe that they gave LaToya the absolute least amount possible because they saw what we believe to be true, which was that LaToya did this because her mother had that level of influence on her.
It seems like that her mother was painting a different story in her head about Martre. She definitely was trying to manipulate her to basically do her dirty work.
You always want to be able to provide something called a motive. And that was the one thing that seemed to be quite elusive during this entire process. And the best that we could come up with was just that her love and infatuation with Maurice Coles was being impacted by Martre, and was being impacted because Martre lived in the home. He was obviously of concern to Maurice to make sure that his son could find a job, figure out what he could do with his own life, and any little bit of attention that was taken away from Denise was a problem.
I think she did it because she was jealous of my mother, because like a piece of my mother was still in the home. My dad had like large photos of my mother, like all blown up over the house. So everywhere she went, he still had her clothes. When we would come to visit, he would talk about her. When she saw Martre, she saw my mother. I think the jealousy with my mother played a very huge part in the death. She was jealous. She was jealous of that. She wanted all attention on her. It can't be on anybody else. It has to be all on her. She don't want it on her children. She don't want it on his children. She just wanted the whole world to revolve around her and him.
What we learned was that Denise is an incredibly jealous and controlling person. And Martre's relationship with her daughter, Elena, became very volatile. And Denise was doing everything she could to not have herself or her daughter blamed for any of the problems in the house. And so I think she was looking for a way to get rid of Martre in a sense, in a way that would make sense, that was explainable. And she saw the college as a strategic way to explain the absence.
She was very understanding, very smart, very intelligent, and she definitely used that as a weapon. The vulnerability, how sweet he was, wanting to let her in, she definitely used that against him.
The fact that there appeared to be no reason that this young man was killed, and how sad it was that he essentially was thrown away like trash. Everything we learned about him was that he was just a genuinely good person that everyone liked. And the fact that his father brought someone into his home that by all accounts we now actually believe he truly trusted and thought was doing something positive for his family, and then she killed his son for basically no reason other than, I'm not getting what I want out of this. And that's horribly sad. He was very talented, and the personality that they shared that he had and the skills that I saw that he had, I think he'd be living a wonderful life, adding creativity and happiness to the world. And the only saving grace that I take from any of this is that I know that he's been reunited with his mother.
June 2022. Pensacola Police Department respond to a call at Creighton Road, where the body of 63-year-old Michael Evers has been discovered inside his automobile workshop.
It seemed like a very cold and callous homicide, and that Mr. Evers had been shot execution style in the back of his head.
Surveillance cameras around the property provide crucial evidence.
They immediately viewed that surveillance video and were able to determine that Mr. Evers did not show up alone.
Police discover the other man in the footage to be a business associate of Mr. Evers.
He's carrying a .38 revolver in his pocket to his friend's business where there's no threat. He thought about this prior to the incident occurring. He felt like he was always getting shorted. He was never getting, his fair end.
He said that my dad had just gotten too big. He was jealous of who my dad was, and that's why, instead of paying my dad, he brought a gun with him.
What happened there on Creighton Road?
What did you do?
This is the story of how a bitter resentment led to cold-blooded murder at the hands of a green-eyed killer.
To execute your friend over a couple $1,000s is just about as cold as it gets.
The city of Pensacola in Escambia County is located on the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Pensacola is in the Florida Panhandle, and it is close to the border of the state of Alabama.
I would describe it as kind of a melting pot of different demographics. We have a lot of military, we've got colleges, we've got a lot of students. We have retirees that come down in the winter. We have beautiful sandy beaches, so we have a lot of spring breakers.
You've got everything from residential areas, business areas, the beaches, all the way up to woodlands and farmland in the northern part of the county.
Pensacola is home to 63-year-old auto shop owner Michael Evers.
Michael Evers was a business owner. He was a family man, and he also had a car hobby.
Restoring old classic cars was his passion. If he wasn't with family or friends, he was working on cars and going to car shows and buying and selling cars. That was what he absolutely loved.
He had so many different ones over the years. There was always a different one coming in. Like, he was late to the rehearsal dinner for marrying my mom because he was buying a 1960 Corvette. You had fun in his presence. He was a fun person to be around.
On June the 2nd, 2022, Michael calls into the Mako Auto Body Repair Shop on Burgess Road that he runs with the help of his stepdaughter, Alana.
Mike wasn't really working much that week. I could run the shop by myself. It was stressful, but I could do it because our shop manager was out sick all week.
Mr. Evers showed up to his shop, and he indicated that he was waiting for a friend to meet him there.
And I told him, I was like, it's actually kind of quiet right now. I was like, if you want to leave, you can, I'll be fine. He said, no, I'm waiting on this guy to come. It's bringing me some money that he owes me. I got busy with work, and then I had to leave for a little while. When I came back, they were loading a Mustang onto one of Mike's trailers, and I'm hooking up to his car, and they were going to take it to Mike's other shop.
The shop on Creighton Road, it was just a garage. He had several, cars in there that he was working on. Had some old gas pumps out front from like the 50s or even earlier.
They both came in the office. It was closing down for the day. The employees were leaving. The three of us just sat in the office together, just kind of talking.
They talked a little bit, and about 5 o'clock, about closing time, they left the Mako shop. They ended up going to Mr. Evers' shop on Creighton Road. Michael Evers had a truck. It was a 2011 Chevrolet. That was the truck that was pulling the trailer with the car on it.
The following day, Mike does not show up for work at the Mako garage.
When he didn't show up Friday, it wasn't unusual. He had other businesses, other things going on. Later that afternoon, a lady he'd been on it like 1 or 2 dates with called me at the shop, and she said he hadn't returned her calls. Had I seen him? And it was so busy that Friday because everyone picks up their cars. And I said, no, I haven't seen him, but he'll be in later, but I'll try and get a hold of him. And I called, it went to voicemail. The weekend came and went, and Sunday, one of Mike's friends, who was a police officer, called me. And he said, hey, Alana, I want to know if you'd seen Mike. I said, no, not since Thursday, but, he had some stuff he was going to do this weekend. I think he maybe had a date or something. And he said, well, he was supposed to show up for a couple of things with friends, and he didn't show up. I said, okay, I'll head to the house and go check there. He said, well, I'm at the house now. He said, he's not here, but Jack, that's Mike's dog, his food and water bowl are full. So, I'm sure he's been here to feed him. I said, not necessarily, because I watch Jack anytime he goes out of town, and he doesn't eat much when Mike's not in town.
Alana called me and she asked me if I had spoken to my dad since Thursday evening, and it was Sunday morning at that point, and told her no, I had spoken to him Wednesday, and she told me his friends can't get a hold of him and they cannot find him. And at that point, I knew something was very wrong.
Michael's family and friends are now seriously worried and begin to coordinate a search.
Mike's friends called me back, said, have you been to the hobby shop? He said, no, not yet. I said, okay, well, I'll meet you over there because you have to have a code to get in the door. He said, okay, I'll meet you there. And I live about 30 minutes away, and he was over in that area. So I called our shop manager. I said, I'm going to head over and meet them, but you're a little closer. If you just go let, him in for me, I'll meet y'all there. He said, yeah, okay, no problem.
Mr. Evers' residence is within the city of Pensacola, which is right around the corner from where our shop was, which is in the county. This police officer comes over into the county, makes entry into the garage, and while walking around the garage, looking around, the police officer actually trips over Mr. Evers' body.
Mr. Evers was located underneath a car tarp that covered his body while he was on the floor. Shop was not ransacked, did not seem to be disturbed.
I was just about to get off the interstate to get there, and I get a phone call, and from the shop manager, and he goes, Mike's dead. I said, what? He goes, Mike's dead. I said, no, he's not. No, he's not. And then they just hung up the phone. We got to the hobby shop, and the police officer that was Mike's friend was there with our shop manager. And I wasn't getting really any information from them. They were like, the shop manager's like, he's there. I walked in, I saw him, he's got a car cover over him. And I'm asking the police officer what happened. He's like, oh, we don't know. Maybe the car fell, like the lift came down on him or something. We don't know at this point. I guess police officer training, he had to be careful about what he said to me at that point.
My brother-in-law called me and told me, I need you to sit down. And I just started screaming no. And they told me that he was found deceased, and I asked what happened, and at that point I was told that he had some type of head injury, maybe a car on a lift had fallen on him, but that he was covered up with a car cover and his truck was gone.
Upon locating Mr. Evers deceased, Pensacola Police Department notified the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Our deputies responded and ultimately called the homicide unit.
The Sheriff's Department, the detectives come, the news, like all the crime scene tapes going up, and I'm just standing there like in shock. And they asked me when I last saw him and who he left with, and I said he was with that guy, and I turned to our shop manager. I said, the guy with the Mustangs, and he couldn't remember his name.
What was once a welfare check has turned into a homicide investigation. Detectives now need to identify the man last seen with Michael. June 2022. The body of 63-year-old Michael Evers is discovered in suspicious circumstances at his Pensacola automobile workshop.
When law enforcement first responded to the car shop on Creighton Avenue, they went inside, and that is when they located Mr. Evers on the ground with a car cover over the top of his body.
Mr. Evers' body being covered after he was injured or killed told us that somebody else was involved, that this wasn't an accident or a suicide or anything like that.
The investigation is handed over to Escambia County Sheriff's Office.
We were able to quickly determine this was a homicide. Our office was notified and we were assigned the case.
I was contacted by Kevin Coxwell, who was my sergeant at the time, and he requested that I respond to the address on Creighton Road. The first thing you want to do when you get on scene is just kind of survey the area, get a lay of the land, see where everything's at, see if there's any witnesses. There was no forced entry, there was no blood spatter. Didn't look like anything had been rifled through as far as any of the tools or anything like that. I observed Mr. Evers deceased on the floor. Upon looking closer, I noticed he had some dried blood on the back of his head.
Michael Evers suffered a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. His hat was located with a apparent gunshot wound to the back of it.
Mr. Evers had been dead for a couple of days. There was not a whole lot of decomposition yet. He was clearly recognizable, and his injury was also.
Investigators carefully examine the crime scene and begin to gather the evidence.
There was a camera on the outside of the shop, and there were also cameras on the inside of the shop. There was no audio, but there was video surveillance.
We were able to locate a room upstairs where those cameras fed to. We made entry into that room and located the video surveillance system, and we were able to review the video at that time.
They came back, the detectives, and they asked me if I knew any reason why anybody would want to hurt Mike. I said, no, he's the best person ever. Like, everyone loves him. But that's when I knew that we weren't looking at an accident.
Once we were able to look at the video surveillance, we were able to see that on June 2nd, Mr. Evers arrived to the business there on Creighton Road, accompanied by another white male.
My first thought was it would never be anyone who actually knew him, because everyone loves him. So it had to have been like a robbery that went wrong, is what I had in my head.
Police were able to get a still shot of the individual that came with Mr. Evers. That still shot was shown to family and friends, and Mr. Ryan Easterling was quickly identified as being with Mike Evers.
It was not someone I knew. They were kind of distant, on and off business partners, I would say, in the sense that they would kind of flip cars together here and there, not frequently. And from what I understand, it wasn't going to continue much longer.
Like, he wasn't somebody who was a big part of the life. We had to call someone else to find out his name to give to the police.
Upon reviewing that video further, it shows, Mr. Evers walk inside, followed by Ryan Easterling. Mr. Evers and Mr. Easterling get into a disagreement, an argument, and Mr. Evers turns to walk away. You're able to see Mr. Easterling pull a firearm out of his right front pocket and shoot Mr. Evers in the back of the head. I observed Mr. Easterling cover up Mr. Evers' body with the car cover, and then he does actually rifle through a few toolboxes and whatnot before leaving.
The surveillance video outside the shop showed the vehicles that the two showed up in. It showed Mr. Evers having a trailer with a Ford Mustang on the back of it.
It was a late 60s model Ford Mustang that was in the process of being restored. He and Mr. Evers both had money tied up in the vehicle to have it fixed, to have it restored.
When When the police got there, Michael Evers' truck was not there. Surveillance video also showed who left in those vehicles, and that was Brian Easterling.
Investigators need to speak to Easterling, who is rapidly emerging as a person of interest, to learn more about the sequence of events leading up to the fatal shooting of Mike Evers 3 days earlier.
Once law enforcement located the surveillance video and showed the still shot to family and friends, Brian Easterling was immediately a suspect. We knew immediately who killed Michael Evers. What we didn't know was why.
Mr. Easterling was a local fire chief about 45 minutes east of Pensacola. He and Mr. Evers had been friends for years. They had done several car restorations together. I was waiting for the judge to sign the warrant, and I just kept thinking, like, is this the right guy? Like, there's nothing in this guy's history that would, lead you to believe that he was capable of something like this.
Investigators form a plan to arrest Brian Easterling for the murder of Michael Evers.
Baker, Florida, where Mr. Easterling was from, is a nearby town. It's a smaller town, smaller community, but it's within driving distance to Pensacola. Brian Easterling was the chief of the fire department for the community of Baker. He was in a leadership role where he had people under him that had to listen to him and take direction from him.
Once we had a signed arrest warrant and a signed search warrant for the residents in Okaloosa County, we traveled to Okaloosa County and met with their SWAT team, their major crimes unit, who assisted us. We then went to the Easterling residence and executed the search warrant and took Brian Easterling into custody for the murder of Michael Evers. He was transported back to the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, where I conducted an interview with him.
When law enforcement took Brian Easterling into custody and then took him to a police station to be interviewed, he acted like he had no idea why law enforcement was there.
What happened there on Creighton Road?
Mike had to go to some kind of function, and so I was in a hurry. So we just swung by there, picked up some parts, and then I left.
He said that he had been to Pensacola but was only there briefly. Then he kind of changed his story and did say that he went to the shop of Mr. Evers on Creighton Road.
Confronting with a little bit, he said, okay, yeah, I stopped by the shop, but he was alive when I left. I didn't hurt him. And I confronted with, hey, there's video inside the shop. What if I told you I have you on video walking up behind Mike when y'all were over by the orange truck, red truck, talking, and you pull a pistol out of your right front pocket and shoot him once in the back of the head? He tried to say, well, I thought he was going to go get a gun, and come back and shoot me, so I shot him first. Upstairs in a safe, in the same room that the video surveillance was in, there's a couple firearms, but nothing readily available.
As Brian Easterling was being interviewed by law enforcement, he indicated that he felt like he was owed money from Mr. Evers.
So what happened?
He owes me some money, and he refused to pay me. Says he owes everybody money.
How much money does he owe you?
About 25 grand.
He was short on money. He felt that he had expended too much money repairing some of these vehicles, and he wasn't being paid back adequately.
Like, he was very financially savvy, but it doesn't mean he was incredibly wealthy, but maybe to an outsider it looked that way, and people could be jealous of that kind of life he had. I think someone like Brian Easterling could look at someone like Mike and feel like it wasn't fair.
He was successful in his life and his career. I think he also spent a lot of money. When we were there at the house doing the search warrant, there was a new pool, new four-wheelers, new camper. Regardless of how much money you make, if you spend it as quick as you make it, you're still broke at the end of the day.
Easterling's wife arrives at the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office and asks to speak to her husband.
During the interview, Brian Easterling showed no remorse whatsoever until the law enforcement officers allowed his wife to come into the interview room and speak with Brian. And it was at that point she became very emotional, and he was obviously very upset that his wife was so upset.
What did you do? I just lost it. It just made me so mad. It just blew me off like I'm not important, and just totally just, it's like, oh well, he didn't care about what I had to have or what I need. And it was just rage. I was just so mad.
If you didn't have your gun, you wouldn't.
I know.
Mr. Easterling's wife was even completely caught off guard when I spoke to her. She said they're friends, they don't have any problems, everything's okay, which obviously it wasn't.
There were a couple of times during Brian Easterling's interview where he said that he considered Mr. Evers like a brother of his.
He tried numerous different stories until he finally settled on I was tired of being taken advantage of and I wanted my money.
Michael Evers' family and friends are left traumatized by the sudden and violent loss of their loved one.
I was really in shock, and I think I'm still in shock all these years later. Like, it's still crazy to me that this happened.
Mike called everyone his friend, but not everyone was his friend. And I told him that one time. I said, not everyone's your friend. And we found that out the hard way.
After the interview with Brian Easterling, detectives are confident that he is the prime suspect. But in order to charge him with the murder, they need to build the case that will take him to trial. Pensacola, Florida, June 2022. Escambia County Sheriff's Office have arrested 52-year-old local fire chief Brian Easterling for the murder of 63-year-old Michael Evers in Michael's vintage car workshop.
Michael Evers owned a body shop store in Pensacola, and he also had a Texaco shop where he kept a lot of his cars that he worked on and sold and refurbished.
Investigators take a closer look at the relationship between the two men.
Mr. Easterling was a family man, had a wife, children, grandchildren, and by all accounts, a nice guy who had spent his life in public service as a fireman. As he got older and got closer to retiring, he became the local fire chief.
Prior to the homicide, there was no indication of any issues between Mr. Evers and Mr. Easterling. They appeared to be friends. They had a lot of business deals together, and it seemed to be a friendship that had gone on for some years.
They were both big into classic cars and restoring cars, so that's where their interests kind of meet.
I didn't really have much of an impression of him. He was just one of the car guys. I mean, Mike dealt with so many different car guys all the time, flipping cars, doing this, doing that.
Evers and Easterling's business relationship had deteriorated following financial disputes.
Mr. Evers would finance the purchase of some of these cars. Mr. Easterling would fix them up, and then they would sell them and then split the profits.
My dad wasn't happy with how things were going. He sold my dad a stolen car, and at that point my dad kind of stepped back from dealing with him, and then they kind of started a little bit again, I guess, but my dad was ready to be done with him.
The difficult part in determining if there were ever any conflicts is that the only side we have is that of Brian Easterling.
Investigators carefully build their case against Easterling for the brutal killing of Michael.
In building this case for trial, we really focused on the chain of events. We wanted to start with the last time Michael Evers was seen and go chronologically throughout the course of the investigation and kind of end with why he says this happened.
There was some cell phone forensics along with the video surveillance, not only from Mr. Evers' shop, but from several other businesses along Creighton Road, which showed when vehicles arrived, when vehicles left. And that was able to nail down the timeline, essentially minute by minute for us.
Despite the growing evidence against Easterling, investigators must prove beyond reasonable doubt his premeditated intention to kill Michael if they're to successfully charge him with first-degree murder.
He was going to take his neighbor's truck because his truck was broke down, so it's almost as though he was looking to use a vehicle other than his in case of getting caught on camera or anything.
Detectives re-examine the surveillance video footage from Michael's workshop for any clues of intention from the time that they get to the garage on Creighton Road.
From the time that they get to the garage on Creighton Road, Mr. Easterling appears to be nervous, cautious. As Mr. Evers opens up the door to go inside, Mr. Easterling looks around nervously. He actually stands in the parking lot and turns in a complete 360-degree circle, which is a little strange. I'm not exactly sure what he was looking for, whether it was cameras or people around, before following Mr. Evers into the garage.
What stood out to me most in this case was just the cold nature of the homicide. The fact that this defendant, who had known Mr. Evers for so long, could just wait for him to turn around, lift up a gun, and then pull the trigger and fire a bullet into the back of his head.
He later said that, they were arguing about the money. They had asked about the money and became angry when Mr. Evers said he didn't have the money to give to him.
His police statement was that my dad owed him around $25,000, and when my dad did not pay him that day, that's when he decided to kill him.
He felt slighted by this, and he felt that he was owed and felt like he was getting taken advantage of.
This was an individual that had known Mr. Evers for 15 years, and the fact that he could put a bullet in the back of his head over an alleged money debt is just almost incredible to believe.
During the course of the investigation, we were unable to locate any evidence that Michael Evers owed Brian Easterling anything.
Detectives retrace Easterling's movements following Michael's murder.
We built the actions of Brian Easterling after the homicide and what he had done in taking the Mustang, driving Mr. Evers' car, bringing it back, parking it, and things of that nature.
When Mr. Easterling left, he did take Mr. Evers' truck with him, along with a classic Mustang on a car hauling trailer.
During the course of the investigation, they located that vehicle not far down the road where it was parked in some apartment complex.
Mr. Easterling said that he felt that he was owed money, that he had been shorted, and he felt that by taking this vehicle and selling it, he could recoup some of that loss.
A strong piece of evidence in this case that was developed later was the fact that Mr. Easterling called a friend of his to take the trailer and hide it and keep it in safekeeping. He also offered to sell that trailer to the man.
After the homicide, Mr. Easterling advised that he threw the murder weapon off the bridge to Escambia Bay. It was never recovered. He said it was a revolver. We didn't recover any shell casings, so they were of no forensic value to us.
Investigators believe they have enough evidence to prove Easterling had planned his attack and charge him with the first-degree murder of Michael Evers.
Mr. Easterling had thought about the act prior to doing it. Maybe not in the sense of, I'm going to go over there and just kill him, but, if I go over there and he doesn't give me some money, I'll kill him.
Some of the evidence that helped show premeditation was Brian Easterling taking his neighbor's truck to go meet Michael Evers. Additionally, premeditation was shown by the fact that Brian Easterling took the trailer, took the car, tried to stash it where it couldn't be found, and then additionally tried to sell it.
On June the 7th, Brian Easterling appears before a judge at Escambia County Courthouse to be formally charged with the murder of Michael Evers.
Going to the courthouse, I remember it was very scary in the sense that, like, what was going to happen now? You know, was he going to be let out? He was on video that day, and that was the first time I had actually ever seen him. So it was a very odd feeling to see the man who took away someone so important to me.
Easterling pleads his innocence and applies for bail, but is refused.
They had assured us that he should not get bond because of the crime, but you never feel relieved until you hear it for sure, you know? And so hearing that was a relief that he would stay in jail.
Mike's family and friends are left devastated by his death in such tragic circumstances.
He was just one of the good guys, you know, one in a million, always a man of his word, always kind, the first to offer help. If anyone needed help with anything, he was going to be the one who jumped in and helped.
If you were in trouble, if you needed something, like, Mike would be the first one there if he found out about it. I mean, he'd see somebody on the side of the road with a flat tire and he'd stop to help them, like, a stranger or not. Like, he just had a generous heart and spirit.
We just referred to Brian Easterling as a monster in our house with our kids. My oldest was 6 at that point, and she carried this fear that the monster who killed her pop-pop was going to come kill her. And as a parent, that is just the most heartbreaking thing.
A trial date is set for December 2023, as Easterling continues to maintain his innocence, leaving the final verdict in the hands of an Escambia County jury. Escambia County, Florida, 2023. 53-year-old Brian Easterling is awaiting trial for the murder of his longtime business associate, 63-year-old Michael Evers. Surveillance footage from Michael's car workshop shows Easterling shooting Michael in the back of the head following an argument over money.
Mr. Evers was a local business owner. He owned a paint and body shop here in Escambia County. He enjoyed working on cars, fixing up cars. Everybody seemed to really, care for him.
Brian Easterling was a 52-year-old man. He was the fire chief in Baker, Florida, a nearby town.
Brian Easterling claimed that Mr. Evers owed him $25,000, but his family strongly disputed that claim.
There is absolutely no proof of any kind that my dad owed him money. He was supposed to bring my dad a check that day for a car deal they had done. I doubt people fully trusted and respected him in the same way that they trusted my dad.
These car guys, they are a unique breed, and they don't really trust each other. But they all trusted Mike.
On December the 12th, 2023, the trial begins at Escambia County Courthouse.
As far as the prosecutors, we felt ready to go. We had worked hard on the case. We had divided tasks. And the day the trial started, we were ready to get justice for Mr. Evers.
Mr. Evers' stepdaughter, Alana, was the first witness that we called to the case. We kind of laid the groundwork for who Mr. Evers was, what his day-to-day was, what his relationship with Brian Easterling was, and the last time that she saw him.
I had to testify because I was the person that identified him, the last person with the two of them. There were depositions and different things leading up to that, but the trial itself, when we first started, they first bring in those that are going to be testifying in front of the judge, for the judge to give you instructions. And he's already in the courtroom too, so I'm standing with my back to him right in front of him, and I felt like I couldn't walk. One of the other people that were testifying kind of had to hold on to my arm and move me out when it was time to walk again, because it was very nerve-wracking to be that close to him.
The first day of the trial, there's obviously a lot of family members and friends that were in the audience. They are certainly anxious. They're nervous for the trial itself. They're also in a position where they have to hear the horrible things that happen to their family members. So it's a lot of emotion for the family members.
It was very difficult when they played the video because we had the murder on video. I didn't leave the courtroom. I just put my head down. I didn't want to see it. I don't ever want to see that video. I have enough of bad images from that in my head. I cannot have that image in my head forever.
Mike's family are horrified when security camera footage of his brutal murder is leaked onto the internet.
Unfortunately, our local media grabbed it and put it up on their YouTube and Facebook pages. So I had to call and very not nicely ask them to take it down for fear that our children would see it. Especially, my son was older. He was a teenager at that point and couldn't risk him seeing that.
Easterling's defense team attempt to portray a different version of events surrounding Michael's violent death in his workshop.
The defense tried to characterize this killing as being not thought out, not planned, but spontaneous and in a moment of rage upon not getting paid.
It was very hard to hear that he, of course, killed him, but then to twist the story in such a way that then attempted to ruin his reputation, because my dad had such a wonderful reputation. My dad can't speak, and everyone's just going with a murderer story and clearly someone who shouldn't be trusted.
When they played his confession tape, to hear him cry about what he lost. Your family can still see you, though, if they choose to. We can't ever see Mike again.
Mr. Easterling had 2 attorneys, so it was hard for us to kind of see him and gauge what he was doing. However, I do recall taking a break when his interview was played for the jurors because he became emotional. But that was the portion when his wife was in the interview room talking to him.
Brian Easterling's statement that he was just filled with rage and that he just reacted based on that rage was to try to diminish the first-degree murder charge. So our strategy was to show that that was not, in fact, the case, that it was not out of rage, but that it was a premeditated murder of Michael Evers.
I don't think he scouted the shop or anything like that. I think he was already familiar with it. How or why he wasn't familiar with the video surveillance, I don't know, but he didn't appear to have any kind of thought or plan to deal with that.
It's very difficult having Brian Easterling take the stand and get up there and just paint my dad as someone he wasn't. He likes to paint himself as the victim, and he is not.
Brian Easterling appeared cool and calm throughout the trial. He seemed to show no real emotions and certainly no remorse.
I feel like everything he used to describe my dad is actually who he was. Quick to anger, that was not who my dad was at all. Having financial problems, my dad was fine financially, but Brian Easterling has public record, been sued by banks multiple times for not paying his debts, so I feel like that was really hard to, again, listen to that.
On the 13th of December 2023, Easterling returns to court for the final verdict.
The jury convicted Brian Easterling of first-degree premeditated murder. He was immediately sentenced to life in state prison. In the state of Florida, life means life, and there is no possibility of parole.
When the verdict was returned, guilty as charged, the family members felt a sense of relief, I believe. I think they were very satisfied with the verdict. They were hoping for a first-degree murder conviction, and that's what the jury returned with.
Michael Evers' family were allowed to address the court after the jury found him guilty. They spoke of the impact that this killing had had on their family, on their loved ones, on their feeling of security, knowing that a friend of their father could take his life.
I do appreciate all the people who worked so hard to make that happen. But at the end of the day, I feel like I will always still hold my breath a bit until he does pass away. You know, there's always that fear, like, what can he do? Yes, he's in jail, but there will never be complete relief as long as he's alive.
Following his sentencing, Easterling is moved to Graceville Correctional Facility, Florida.
Justice was served in this case, and Mr. Easterling will spend the rest of his life in prison.
There is a bit of relief knowing that it's done. I mean, we knew there would be an appeals process too, but he's been sentenced. Being able to go home and tell your children he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, he's not going to get out. But you don't ever really feel like fully justice was served because Mike's never coming back. We don't get to see him again. He doesn't get to watch his grandkids grow up.
The impact that Brian Easterling had on Michael Evers' family is indescribable, really. When they spoke at the sentencing hearing and talked about how much they missed him and the loss that it was to their family and all the things that he was never going to get to see their family do, and the fact that he had such young grandchildren who are going to have a hard time remembering who he was because they were so young. I mean, the impact will impact their family for years.
The conviction of Brian Easterling for the cold-blooded murder of Michael Evers leaves the surrounding community in complete shock.
Brian Easterling was, by all accounts, an upstanding person, a leader in his community, and for jealousy or disrespect to come into play and cause him to do what he did was really unique and not common.
It's baffling to me that you would kill someone over money. If he didn't have the money to pay my dad 100% would have worked with him. My dad would have given him time if he needed it.
Two friends and one's successful and one's not, and I think it was a lot of jealousy. Built up frustration on Mr. Easterling's part. I think he truly felt he was being taken advantage of by his friend, whether it's true or not.
He did damage his own family, and it's not their fault what he did, and I feel bad for them in a way, but to hear him cry about what he's lost, it was very, very hard to hear that, and made me very angry too.
The warmth and generosity shown by Michael throughout his life live on even after his tragic death.
His legacy will continue. There is a scholarship at the local auto body school in his name, so that will live on.
My dad was someone who you could always count on, and just one of the true good men out there who loved life and loved his family and friends so much.
I think anyone who really knew him, when you mention his name, they're going to smile because they think of all the fun they had with him, the good times, how he helped them, how he would help anybody. You know, he was the best.
July 17th, 2011. Laura Ackerson, a 27-year-old mother of two, is not heard from in days.
The last known phone contact was a voicemail that we know Laura left her business partner.
The fact that she says, "I want to meet with you afterwards," and then doesn't, that was a red flag.
A large-scale missing person investigation is launched.
The U-Haul, the reciprocating saw, the ice chest. I mean, those aren't usual items you buy together. And then you leave all this stuff and you make an unexplained sudden trip. And these are all acts that raise suspicion for sure.
Police soon make a gruesome discovery.
There's something white, kind of white and pinkish, that's tied up in the middle of the water lilies. I think it was the lower part of the torso that we found first.
DNA evidence enabled us to secure a positive identification of the remains.
What they did to Laura is barbaric.
It's not long before potential perpetrators in the suspected murder of Laura Ackerson begin to emerge.
Rage and jealousy, I think, are two powerful emotions.
This whole situation made me question humanity.
Raleigh, North Carolina, is known for its tree-lined streets and residential neighborhoods.
It's a good place to live if you like that city life. You know, it has a lot of that. The economy's good. Primary industry is pharmaceuticals, IT. It's a growing city. If you encompass like what we call RTP, which is this area that includes Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, you know, there's, I think, over 1 million people that live here. As far as crime, obviously we have our fair share, but I think compared to other cities of the same size, it's probably not quite as bad. It's probably a little bit less.
Living in the nearby city of Kinston is 27-year-old Laura Jean Ackerson, a young mother of 2 boys.
Everything I learned about Laura was that she had had some struggles in life, maybe not always the greatest of family connections, but that she had an intense drive to make her life better.
Laura was by all accounts, a hardworking young girl, and she'd been working hard to provide for the boys.
She had a business up and going. She had some very good close friends, and she was doing everything she could to be a self-starter and get her business going, get herself on her feet in a financial situation to where she could care for her 2 boys.
On the 13th of July, 2011, Laura makes a trip into Raleigh. 4 days pass and no one hears from Laura. Her friends begin to worry.
The initial report came from Siobhan Mathis. Last she had spoken to Laura was the previous Wednesday. She was going to give it through the weekend. And if she didn't hear back from Laura, then first thing Monday morning, she was going to go to the police station and report her missing. And that's what she did.
It was ultimately reported as a missing person case to the Kinston Police Department on the 17th. So 4 days had passed.
We didn't know the type of person she was. I mean, people go missing all the time, right? And then they show up in a few days or a week later. Did she just voluntarily go somewhere? We had put out a bolo for Laura's car. Just before midnight, roughly around 11 p.m., the patrol officers found the car. And where they found it was several hundred yards away from where Grant and Amanda lived.
Grant Hayes is the father of Laura's children. They share custody, but he lives in Raleigh with his new partner, Amanda.
Laura came to Raleigh maybe 5 or 6 years before. And then it was sometime during that moment that she met Grant.
I think everything was very rosy at the beginning for Laura and Grant. At that time, he was kind of coming like an up-and-coming musical artist in their area. And so I think, you know, she was a little bit starstruck with him. Over time, though, obviously, things became much more controlling. When the second child was born, there was at least, you know, somewhat of rekindling to try to make things work since there's 2 children in the picture now. Grant had gone and moved on to Amanda by then anyway, but Grant is somebody who was never going to change his ways.
I was 19 years old whenever my mom met Grant Hayes. He was very charismatic. He was a very clean-cut guy. He was not much older than I was, and he was much younger than my mom. But I just thought it was a game. You know, they were just spending time together. I didn't think anything serious would come of it.
Grant and Laura were going through this child custody case.
It was an intense custody battle, and she's up against Grant, who's now using Amanda's money to fund his side of this custody battle.
Grant was actually lying to Laura. He was telling Laura that my mom was an investor and that there was nothing romantic going on between them. He was just trying to get money out of her, that she was a rich white lady that was going to give him money.
It was just nasty. I mean, the allegations that were being thrown out there by Grant and Amanda both, alleging that Laura had been an escort, you know, things that were completely false that would have definitely affected the custody arrangements. Fortunately, the court in that case had gotten a psychologist involved, and a psychologist saw exactly who Grant Hayes was, how dangerous he was, and how unfit he may have been to have custody of those boys.
Well, the psychological evaluation says that he has sociopathic tendencies. He was not safe, that he was an unpredictable individual.
This is a very long investigation, but it went from 0 to 100 pretty quick. We found out several things that kind of changed the trajectory of the whole investigation.
Police investigating Laura's missing persons case first need to establish what she was doing on the day of her disappearance.
Laura was working. She had several appointments set to help try to get her business up and going, and was going to be in the area of where Grant and Amanda were living.
We actually spoke to the business owner who met with Laura, and he said, yeah, we got done about 4 o'clock. When they finished the meeting, she made a comment about, well, I got to go to Raleigh now. I'm heading to Raleigh now.
The last known phone contact was a voicemail that we know Laura left her business partner and a friend about maybe meeting up for dinner, but that she was going to go see her boys first.
The fact that she says, I want to meet with you afterwards, and then doesn't, that was a red flag.
By best accounts, she probably got to Grant and Amanda's home by about 5 or 5:30 p.m.
Investigators focus on Grant Hayes' apartment as Laura's last known location.
In the early morning hours, we were able to get a search warrant. We get a key from management because Grant and Amanda are not there. The apartment's locked. When we first initially opened that door, there's this huge bleach stain. As we continued through the apartment, one of the things that catches our attention pretty quickly, this hallway bathroom is very clean and again smells like bleach. There were several items that we noticed that appeared to be missing. A shower curtain. The shower curtain rod was missing. There were no rugs on the floor. We don't know exactly what happened to Laura, but whatever happened, it happened at this apartment, and somehow or another, Grant and Amanda are involved, or they know what happened.
The discoveries made in the apartment of Grant and Amanda Hayes are concerning for detectives. Police need to locate the couple for questioning. What began as a missing person case is beginning to look a lot more serious. Raleigh, North Carolina. On the 17th of July, 2011, 27-year-old mother of 2 Laura Ackerson is reported missing. 4 days earlier, she had traveled to her ex-partner Grant Hayes' apartment to visit her sons. No one has seen her since. Police need to locate Hayes and his partner Amanda to find out what they know.
I got a phone call and my mom said, I'm not doing okay. And we're going to go to Texas and we're going to go visit my sister. And then within 3 days, I had detectives knocking on my front door.
This is her mom, right? So I think this was tough for her.
After like 6 hours of sitting in a room talking to detectives and finding out that something may seriously be wrong.
She told us that Grant and Amanda had gone down to Texas, that they had rented a U-Haul trailer. Why'd they go to Texas?
We'd received a call from the detectives with Raleigh Police Department. They'd explained that they were searching for a missing person. They said they were hoping it was only a missing person case, but things were appearing pretty ominous. Their investigation picked up some activities that Grant and Amanda were conducting there.
We know that by 2 a.m., Grant's captured on camera at Walmart.
Grant was seen buying a reciprocating saw, along with 2 coolers, ice chest, and some other miscellaneous items, in addition to renting a U-Haul and then traveling here to Fort Bend County for what seemed to be a spur-of-the-moment trip.
Grant and Amanda Hayes are tracked to Amanda's sister's house in the suburb of Richmond, Texas.
I think it was kind of a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants plan, but they needed a place to go. And the tie to Richmond is directly with Amanda, not Grant. And that is because Amanda's sister, Karen Berry, lived right on Oyster Creek.
Amanda's own sister wasn't expecting them, and they came under the guise of bringing a family heirloom cabinet, which meant absolutely nothing to Karen Berry, as evidence that it was still sitting out on the porch outside when I got there.
When police knocked on her door, she knew why they were there, and they asked to talk to her, and she asked them if she could have a moment to pray first.
Karen and Amanda were very close. Karen was almost like a mother to Amanda. You're asking someone that's your sister, almost like a mother, to say something bad about.
After they had conducted a brief interview with Karen, concerns really started to mount.
Following up on the interview with Amanda's sister Karen, detectives speak to Karen's son, Shelton Berry, to confirm some of the suspicious conversations that Grant Hayes has reportedly been having with the family.
He never asked you something crazy like, will alligators eat people, or...
Oh yeah, he did actually. He asked if they'd eat you.
They'd asked to borrow her son's truck on several occasions.
She asked to borrow my truck to go to the store.
They were asking about locations of Home Depots and Lowe's, several box stores where they could get some supplies. During a later interview, they'd even made mention of muriatic acid. These were all things that really gave us some concerns, and specifically when she mentioned that they asked to borrow her son's boat. He had a small aluminum boat that he kept across the street.
Karen told us about this kind of nighttime boat ride, right, that Grant and Amanda had.
When was it that you saw them going for a ride in the boat?
The last night that they were here.
If you're going to take the boat out, most people are going to take it out during the daytime, right, to go fishing or whatever.
On these missing person investigations, you have to manage them as though you're looking at a homicide from the start. Otherwise, you overlook evidence, and evidence gets lost and destroyed. As the investigation continued and each bit of information continued to build, the outlook was not good.
While Amanda's sister, Karen Berry, is being interviewed, investigators tracking Grant and Amanda Hayes' movements uncover further incriminating evidence.
Footage showing Amanda going to an ATM, withdrawing cash, and then Grant going into Home Depot using that cash to purchase muriatic acid and a large trash can.
We were able to identify some of the clerks that had waited on him there at the store. And discovered the absurd story that he was presenting to them. He said that he was planning on cleaning a hog pen, a dirt hog pen with muriatic acid. We had gone back to the house and searched the hog pen, and in fact located an area of the soil was darkened in the center, and then once you approached it you could smell the chemicals. We even found the cardboard advertisement that was on the neoprene chemical proof gloves that he bought. So it all lined up, it matched.
There was one location that was becoming a common location for illegal dumping.
It turned out that environmental department had placed essentially game cameras in that area to try and identify who's doing this dumping and, to issue citations accordingly.
And Amanda chose to dump that muriatic acid in that one location. And so the camera captures her by herself, driving a truck up to that location, unloading the leftover muriatic acid and dumping it in this area where there had been a lot of illegal dumping.
The environmental unit, they got that off the camera and went over there and collected it, not knowing that it's in relation to a homicide.
In this case, each piece of information that they had uncovered there in Raleigh before they even got here was pointing towards Grant and Amanda Hayes. The U-Haul, the reciprocating saw, the ice chest. I mean, those aren't usual items you buy together. And then you leave all this stuff and you make an unexplained sudden trip. I mean, these are all acts that raise suspicion for sure.
On the 24th of July, 2011, police decide they have enough evidence to take the investigation to the next level.
With learning about the information of the boat and some of the evidence that they had left behind at the house, namely the 2 brand new coolers they had just bought, all of it was pointing in a bad direction. And that's when we initiated a search of Oyster Creek.
We put into the water maybe 100 feet south of where the house was, because that was the easiest to get the boat in. We weren't in the water 10 minutes, and we're like, okay, there's something white, kind of white and pinkish, that's tied up in the middle of the water lilies. This is part of the torso. I think it was the lower part of the torso that we found first.
As feared, it was a dismemberment case.
This is serious now. This is real. I mean, we're looking at it, and now we've got to recover these body pieces.
The search was hampered at that point because of all the hydrilla that was growing, and they couldn't get into the water.
You can't take an electric boat or a motor through it because it'll clog up your motor.
So we secured the area, and I contacted the Houston Police Department dive team.
Oyster Creek is what we call black water. When you go down, you can't see in front of your face. The divers, they're in it. Their faces are in that water. You know that the fat and the oils from the body is now on their face.
The water was 90 degrees. I mean, we're talking, it was the end of July in Texas, and yes, it was very hot. It was not long before they began to recover additional remains. The most important discovery for the investigation was the recovery of Laura's head, the skull. We contacted a forensic odontologist. They came and were able to conduct a match between the dental records that they had for Laura and the remains. It's a sad deal. That ends the hope that you're going to find Laura alive and well. However, it gives Laura the opportunity to shed light on what happened to her.
The skull was also very different than the other body parts in terms of the level of decomposition.
The odontologist could see the remnants of acid on the teeth.
They said it is consistent with chemical etching, which ties in and corroborates the use of muriatic acid.
Police now feel confident that Grant and Amanda Hayes are the prime suspects in the murder of Grant's ex-wife, Laura Ackerson, but the couple's location is still unknown. Police must track them down to ensure justice is served for this horrific crime. July 2011. A North Carolina missing persons case for 27-year-old mother of two Laura Ackerson has now escalated into a cross-state homicide investigation. Police uncover incriminating evidence showing Laura's ex-partner Grant Hayes and his new partner Amanda purchasing chemicals, transporting dismembered remains in a rented U-Haul, and traveling more than 1,200 miles to Texas in a potential effort to destroy evidence.
Grant and Amanda began this concealing episode almost instantly there with dissecting of the body, which is gruesome in itself. But the cleaning of their apartment, there was evidence of bleach usage, staining on the floor and the carpeting all in the house. This wasn't something that would just spur the moment. I mean, they were calculating out their moves as they went through this.
Police locate the suspected couple at Grant Hayes' parents' house in Kinston, North Carolina.
Before we arrested them, before we picked them up and charged them, we were able to obtain a search warrant for their person to collect like DNA and fingerprints. What stood out to me about that encounter was the way that they interacted. They were acting like two teenagers in love. But you just killed somebody. It's almost like they were putting on this show.
Grant and Amanda are arrested and charged with the murder of 27-year-old Laura Ackerson.
Neither one of them agreed to an interview. Both of them invoked their rights to an attorney. But Grant, he plays this game of like, I don't know if I want to talk or not. And it just kind of goes back and forth there for a little while. He says, hey, can I get a pen and a notepad or a piece of paper? I give him a notepad and a pen, and I'm hoping that he maybe is going to write out a statement, right? I go back in the room. He had written, and I don't know if you remember this, but there was a song where it was peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. Well, he had written that over and over and over and over and over and over and over, all the way down the page, right? So why? What's the purpose? Did you ask for the paper and pen just to play games?
Grant tries to diminish his responsibility in Laura's death.
He continued to try to feed this line of, this was all Amanda's fault.
He thought that he was going to put this all on my mom and everybody was going to believe him.
Amanda did all of this. Any and everything I did was only to help Amanda.
So they're no longer a duo at this point. She's saying he did it, and he's saying she did it. So now they were at odds.
Amanda claims she was coerced into helping Grant, but her sister provides evidence to the contrary.
It scared me because she said I hurt her bad.
Specifically, Amanda told her, I hurt Laura. I hurt her bad. And so that's how we knew Amanda was in on this from the very beginning in that apartment. This was not something she had no knowledge of. This was not something she had been forced to do. Because if she had, her words to her sister would have been, Grant did this, Grant did that. But her words to her sister were, I hurt Laura, I hurt her bad.
Grant Hayes is tried first in September 2013, facing charges of first-degree murder.
Watching Grant in trial almost looked like he was enjoying himself, frequently smiling, looking around in the courtroom to see who was there to see him. At one point in his trial, a song was played that he had written clearly about Laura in a derogatory manner about Laura, and it was being played to further implicate him in his case. And as the song played, you can see him sitting in the courtroom bopping his head, tapping his foot, like he's enjoying that his music is being played in a forum like that.
I still see today the look on Grant's face when they played his CD. You're on trial for murder. We're just looking at photos of a dismembered body that you did, of a woman that you loved, of a woman that you share 2 beautiful children with, and you're smiling because they're playing your CD. That, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget him smiling.
Grant's trial was a show, for sure. For him, that's what it was. It was a show. It was a show that he was getting to put on for the world because he knew it was being broadcasted. He treated it as such.
When you have a female victim, it is more common that they're going to know their perpetrator.
Grant was a very controlling and jealous person.
I have no doubt there was probably some level of domestic violence between them. I think he believed that it was going to be very soon that he may lose custody of his boys.
I think jealousy played a huge role. A huge role. Being jealous of her and the possibility that she's going to have custody of the children.
He's extremely manipulative, used to getting what he wants, and he had decided he wanted absolute control over those boys. Laura was an impediment to that. He would do anything he had to do to have that control.
I knew about the custody battle. I knew about them having arguments and the phone calls. He would scream at her. He would call her names. He would tell her that she was dumb, and he was very degrading to Laura. In his sadistic mind, that was the only way to confirm that she never got the boys. But for the trial for Grant, that was his last hurrah. He really thought somehow or another he was going to get away with this.
In Grant's case, they did not deliberate long at all. The jury deliberated for like an hour and a half.
And he was ultimately convicted of murder, first-degree murder, and sentenced to life without parole.
Amanda Hayes is tried after on the 3rd of February 2014, also facing charges of first-degree murder.
They were tried separately. I think probably that Amanda's attorneys felt like that would be more beneficial for her.
Amanda had quite a bit of money that she had saved up from her acting and from an inheritance from a former husband. But I think that they were draining everything with legal expenses, with, trying to promote Grant's music career. No doubt Amanda's in a situation with just had a baby, don't have any money, in the middle of this custody battle we're about to lose. Like, we have got to find a solution to make this problem stop.
The general consensus was that there was a good degree of animosity between Amanda and Laura.
Amanda's jealousy of Grant's relationship with both the boys and with Laura. Jealousy over sort of this picturesque family, right? I mean, there certainly might have been even some jealousy on the part of Laura.
Amanda, I think, probably fed into his jealousy, because I think she absolutely has it in her to be jealous of Laura. I think it started with rage, and then I think Amanda brought the jealousy into it. I think Amanda and Grant's, their emotions just fed each other. I think they combined to form a perfect storm.
Amanda and her team argue that she felt trapped and acted out of fear, claiming Grant threatened her.
Amanda physically portrays sort of a meek and sweet lady, but the more you learn about her, you realize that that is not at all the case. She was a pretty fiercely independent woman, had formal acting training, starred in a couple small roles in films. She knew how to put on a character.
They were able to dress her up. They bought her the most innocent looking outfits that you could wear. And it was every day for a month, right? She was dressed like she was going to church.
It was this image of sweet, meek, quiet, abused Amanda. When questioning Amanda, if I could find areas to kind of push her buttons and suggest that she was lying, and that she was putting up an act, that was when you would usually see little bits and pieces of the real Amanda come through. To give credit to her attorneys in North Carolina, they did a very good job preparing her and rehearsing. And to some degree, I think the jury there bought it a little bit, because the jury found her guilty of second-degree murder, and she was sentenced to a range of years, 13 to 16 years in prison.
Those closest to the case believe the sentence was too light and decide to continue to pursue justice.
Everybody involved, the investigators, the prosecutors, we had already discussed that if Grant or Amanda, either one of them or both of them, got anything less, if they were convicted for anything less than first-degree murder here in North Carolina, that we were going to seek charges in Texas.
We had sufficient evidence here in Texas to seek prosecution in Fort Bend County for the crimes that were conducted here outside of the murder. And that would be the tampering with the evidence with a human corpse.
Prosecutors now prepare for the difficult challenge of extradition of Amanda to Texas to ensure she faces the full extent of justice that she deserves. But will they be successful? By February 2014, 3 years after the 2011 murder of Laura Ackerson, Grant and Amanda Hayes have been convicted of first and second-degree murder respectively. However, unsatisfied with Amanda's sentence, law enforcement seek additional charges in Texas.
I spoke with them, and it was really just a request of, hey, we're not real happy about this. Laura Ackerson's family's not real happy about this 13 to 16-year sentence that Amanda received. Is there something that Texas can do related to her charge? After looking into it a little, we felt like we had a solid case for a second-degree felony tampering with a corpse charge, and received permission to extradite Amanda from North Carolina to Texas to face that charge here. We only did that after researching to confirm that any prison time we could get here in Texas would actually be stacked on top of her sentence in North Carolina, so that it would actually accomplish additional incarceration.
The trial here was, in comparison to the one in Raleigh, was obviously much more abbreviated. She was already convicted of murder, and so was Grant. That has already been established. What we needed to establish was that they tampered with evidence, and so those charges were presented to the DA's office here in Fort Bend County.
In August 2018, Amanda is put on trial once again. She sticks to the narrative that Grant was the mastermind behind it all.
Her defense was that Grant manipulated her either by force or threat of force, or by threat of force toward the children. Pretty early in the investigation, we recover this video from a Chick-fil-A right down the street from where Grant and Amanda live. On the same night of the murder, Amanda is in the Chick-fil-A with the 3 kids, the 2 boys, little Grant, Gentle, and then the newborn Lily. And she ordered enough food for her, the kids, and Grant. If you felt that you needed to get away, and if you were being held against your will in this situation, then there's a great opportunity, right? This Chick-fil-A is about 3 or 4 minutes from the police station. But she didn't do that. What did she do? She ordered him some food to take back to him.
Both Amanda and Grant's trials were fully televised in North Carolina. They were big-time news there and very closely followed. The benefit it gave me here was that I was able to go back and watch both of their trials, and in particular watch Amanda's testimony in North Carolina to help prepare for if she was to testify in the case here. Amanda's claim at trial was, I didn't know we were transporting a body. I had nothing to do with the murder. I didn't want to have anything to do with disposing of the body, but I was forced to do this by Grant.
She was very much complicit in this whole scheme, the whole criminal scheme. Amanda was the one that went to the ATM outside the Home Depot and withdrew money approximately 30 minutes before this purchase took place, where they paid cash.
And when we have video of her looking just fine and by herself dumping the muriatic acid down the street, it kind of hurts that argument that this is somehow something that she's only doing by coercion and duress by Grant.
Further evidence showed Amanda's complacency and comfort with the crimes committed.
We recovered from a digital camera that they had this series of pictures that were taken in a hotel room on the way back from Texas back to North Carolina. You got to think of it in the context of what had happened, right? They had killed Laura. They had dumped her body in Texas. And now they're on the way back to North Carolina to start their new life as a family. My professional opinion of her in the case is she was just as involved and just as much an active participant and just as culpable as Grant was.
This was a difficult case, with extradition back to Texas and then having to coordinate to put together a trial in Texas using primarily evidence from North Carolina was a difficult task. And so it's a lot of responsibility. And so there was definitely a sense of justice once that was completely accomplished here, to pull everything together and get a sentence that was appropriate for the situation for Amanda.
A jury reached a decision, and the court handed down the sentence. And that goes for the trial of Amanda here in Texas as well. She received the maximum for that sentence, which was an additional 20 years to be served consecutive to her sentence there in Raleigh. And she's here in prison now.
I distinctly remember when the trial ended that the judge said that was one of the most evil characters that she had ever had in her courtroom. And this is a seasoned attorney and judge who had sat through the trial. And the whole experience to her, she felt like she had experienced true evil right there in the courtroom.
Even with the trials completed, some details of the case would never become clear.
The one thing that feels unresolved is we don't know exactly what happened in the apartment. How did the attack play out? How did the murder play out? What were all the circumstances of why you attacked her?
We have all heard what the coroner said, but my speculation of what I think happened to Laura is I think that he strangled her in the heat of rage, and I think that he put her body in the bathtub and sent my mom and the kids out of the house, and then he did whatever he did.
This day and age, with the level of technology and advancements we have in forensic science, I would have fully expected something to be missed and there be some level of forensic evidence in that bathroom. But as some of the detectives on the case described that bathroom as the cleanest bathroom they had ever seen. The fact that we did not get anything out of that bathroom, not a hair, not a drop of blood, absolutely nothing.
The sheer brutality of the crime would leave a lasting impact on both law enforcement and the community of Raleigh as a whole.
It's always going to be with me. I'm always going to know what it feels like on that creek that day on July 24th, 2011. I'm always going to feel that heat. I'm always going to feel that close to 100% humidity, I'm always going to see that silky sheen over the water, knowing that it's adipose tissue and oils from the body. I'm always going to have that smell.
What they did to Laura is barbaric. The physical, strenuous level that it would take to actually saw apart a human body. And you're doing it in a relatively small apartment, in a bathroom in that apartment where there are 3 small children, and then loading up those body parts in various coolers and putting your children in a vehicle where you are now transporting those body parts.
How is it you look in the mirror at your children knowing that You have killed and dismembered their mother, and she's in the back.
They're all teenagers now. I'm concerned for how this case will affect them through their life. But I hope that what happened in this case and what their father did doesn't affect them, doesn't reflect on them negatively.
I can't imagine, just for your average person who didn't even know Laura, to sit in those courtrooms and see the video and photographs of what was recovered from the creek would be an extremely difficult thing to do. But to be a friend or loved one of her and have to see those kinds of things. Laura's father was one of those individuals where just looking at him, you could see the grief in his eyes. He suffered a tremendous amount of grief with what happened to Laura. Not just obviously having a family member murdered is horrible for anybody, but to have that additional aspect of her body being so completely desecrated. And that takes an incredible amount of strength just to, sit in and hear those kinds of details over and over again, to sit in a courtroom and face the people who killed your daughter.
Rage and jealousy, I think, are two powerful emotions. They are both incredibly powerful emotions. Can they come up out of the spur of the moment? Yes. Can they be calculated? Absolutely.
I believe the only thing that they're remorseful and regretful about is the situation that it put them in.
You're exactly where you need to be, which is away from the public. So we've got nothing for you here, not in our society.
These were people that were just totally selfish and overcome with their jealousy and hatred, and acted on those emotions for what they perceived to be the solution, which was killing her. It's ironic that what they did to her, essentially they wound up doing to themselves in regard to missing out on the lives of the children.
I don't know if a guilty verdict is enough. I don't know how it could be, because your loved one is still gone. Is it something that you can hold on to? Yes. But I think that's all that we can give you through the criminal justice system is a conclusion.
The one thing that this whole situation teaches us is you do not know what's going on behind closed doors. Don't judge a book by its cover, because what you see and what's really happening are never the same.